I'm a freelancer, and I've been worried for some time about the degree to which we invest in what I've been calling a freelancer first philosophy. And what I mean by freelancer first is that we prioritize the success and prosperity of freelancers in addition to uh, prioritizing the success and satisfaction of clients. In so many ways, clients have gotten so much of the love of the freelance platform. I think it would be fantastic if we were to find ways to not only love our clients, but also to love our freelancers. And that means a variety of things that we'll get into. But think in terms of that freelancer first philosophy. And in addition to writing about that stuff on a pretty regular basis, I'm working with a bunch of platforms to help them to think more deeply about what Freelancer First could mean to them. The reason that I'm here with Mike Morris today is that I can't think of anybody who has a more illustrious career in freelancing. It's funny to talk about illustrious careers in freelancing when it's only a couple of decades old, but he seems to meet that standard. And I thought we might all have a conversation about it, though starting with me and Mike, about what Freelancer First means, how you build it into your platform, how you provide those services to your freelancers, or how freelancers can better understand what to ask for in the things that they need. So with that as a background, Mike, would you spend a few minutes talking a little bit about yourself and the kind of experiences that you've had, not only in Top Coder and Torque, but even start a little bit further back? How'd you get into this field? What made you invest a career in freelancing?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thank you for the introduction. And clearly, you are one of the smartest people on the planet in this space, and I've learned far more from you than you have from me. So,
Well, I'm the
also,
oldest
also
guy on
clearly
this
one of
case.
the most humble you
Thank
are.
you.
So,
Thank you.
so I mean, you know, the the path here is fairly simple. I by trade, I studied computer science and was a software developer. And I came out of school and worked for a small consulting company during the internet boom. And I think I quickly kind of realized that, talent was it. Like all these amazing projects that I worked on and all these amazing e-commerce platforms, and at the end of the day, if you couldn't find the talent, like that was the secret to the success. Like that was the flux capacitor to every innovation that was being built, was, can you find the talent to do it? So I think I sort of stumbled on that as a result of coming out of college when the dot-com boom was happening. And so I really set the rest of my career out to really focus on solving the talent problem, solving creating opportunities in the talent ecosystem. And the first one was a group of us left that first startup, that first consulting company, and started Top Coder. And it was very simple, things that we learned during our years coding. Like we were like, hey, coders love to solve problems and they love to compete in solving problems. So we decided to build a platform that resembled playing chess, but instead of playing chess, you were actually solving computer problems. And that was the start of Top Coder. We just figured if we can find and identify really good software developers, really good data scientists, that we could build a business on top of that. That was basically our business plan. And so that was 2001 timeframe where we launched Top Coder. And it ended up being really successful. We figured out how to attract developers. There wasn't anything that existed like that after you graduated college, so you could participate in competitions and get profiles and earn credits, in a global community. So that was the start of Top Coder. We really did a phenomenal job at capturing the development community. Like that was the thing that I kind of look back on, and I'm like, wow, we stumbled into a lot of great things, like using competition, doing the profiles, the recognition part of it, gamifying the entire experience from a developer perspective, and most importantly, just listening. I remember early on, we had a channel on our forums called Evolving Strategy. I'm not kidding. Like what we were doing in 6 months was coming from that channel. So the community would come in, they would say, hey, what about this, that, and the other thing? Or somebody would come in and say, hey, if you change this rating system and do it this way, and we would just start to adapt what they were, what was coming out of that Evolving Strategy channel. And it helped us kind of guide at least the community side of the company. And then, fast forward, I ended up going into another company, same type of business model, crowdsourcing, community-based crowdsourcing for software development in the Salesforce ecosystem. That was around 2012, called CloudSpokes. Got the opportunity to merge CloudSpokes and TopCoder together, which was perfect. Kind of take two babies and combine them together. We did that around 2013, and then kept on building the model. It was definitely a successful business from all accounts, but a lot of learnings that we had in terms of how to build, especially on the customer side, how to build the model. We eventually sold it to Wipro in 2016, and that was, when we started thinking about, okay, well, hey, what's next? And the concept of torque is what came out of that. A few conversations, my friend and co-founder of anything that I've done in my professional career, Dave Messenger. So he came along, and the two of us just started whiteboarding, what would we do as a next company? We ended up meeting another person throughout this whole journey called Frank D'Souza. Frank was the founder and chairman of Cognizant. He had recently stepped down from his role at Cognizant, and we met and said, hey, let's figure something out. He really solved the consulting and kind of the growth side of a business, and Dave and I really understood the community and the freelancer side of the business. So we kind of joined together and came up with a torque business plan.
So I've gotta ask you, and folks, please unmute and ask Mike whatever you'd like. I'm gonna pick one. So I'm Caroline, and I'm not really Caroline, but I can see Caroline right there. And Caroline, you have a platform in Syria. Am I correct? Did I say that correctly?
In Jordan, working all over the Middle East.
Please forgive me. So what does it mean to gamify? Well, I'm sure people have heard that and said, that is an interesting concept. And then the second and related question is, when you talk about crowdsourcing, what do you mean by that? So let's start with the gamify. How would it feels so heavy sometimes to be a freelancer trying to get work. If you could make it a little lighter, that would be a heaven sent opportunity. What does gamify mean in practical terms?
Great. If I was in my other office, I would show you a badge. So I think the best lesson on gamification, a lot of people think it's a relatively new thing. It's not. In fact, I think for me, when I think about who did it in a way, I look back and I'm like, wow, they did it in a way that just made a huge difference. It was NASA. So back in the 1960s, in the race to get the Apollo mission, the race for the Apollo mission was a seemingly impossible task. Okay. And so what they did was they created these mission badges, which NASA still uses today. And I have some of them for work that we did with NASA. And they created these mission badges, and they made it such a pride of ownership experience for anybody that was involved with it. Like, to get one of those badges was more impactful than the money you were paid, than what you learned, anything else. So it was this whole concept of gamification, getting people behind a cause and a mission. And you can do that on a very large thing, like, hey, let's land on the moon. But you can also do that in a very small thing, like, hey, let's achieve, 2,000 hours of practice mission for every actual hour of the mission. And they broke their what they needed to accomplish down into these minute goals, and they put achievements around them, and they celebrated those achievements, and they recognized the people that were able to that contributed to those achievements. And it got an entire large separate distributed team to really come together and solve something that was, again, a seemingly unsolvable problem. That is a great example of gamification. Now, since then, what we've done is we've done things, we've digitized it, right? There's no longer these badges you put on your shirt. They're now badges that you earn in your profiles. They're recognition that you get. They're things they're goals that you can achieve that are publicly celebrated. And that's the key thing to it, right? You're celebrating the wins, you're celebrating the achievements, and you're making it something that, becomes more passion driven than anything else. We always said there's three big motivations, right? It's what you earn, what you learn, and the recognition or fun that you have doing it, right? And at any point in time in somebody's life, there's going to be a different one of those that's your primary motivation. So to me, that's kind of what gamification is all about.
I love that. I love that. Let me take that and I want to turn it to the group. Sylvia, are you unmute?
No, I'm just, I'm here.
Do you lead a platform, or are you an individual freelancer?
I'm an individual freelancer building a freelance community in the past 10 years in Hungary, joining in May to the global one under Freelance Business Community, and visioning a co-working movement in Hungary. So it's a mix of everything.
So I've got a question for you, and that is, I love what Mike just laid out for us. Earn, learn, and recognize. Those are really powerful things. As you think about Hungary and the community that you're building, where are you focusing now, and are you thinking about all three of those things? If you had a question for Mike around how to make that happen in Hungary, what would it be? And I'm going to ask everybody else the same thing. So Caroline, same question. Philip, same question. Stephen, well, let's sort of mix it up a little bit. So where are you focusing right now?
It's pretty much the learn part, and not really the not really in a easy way, or not in a way how from books or even knowledge sharing. It's rather the connection. So it's what I see in the past couple of events I attended these days. So the word around us is just extremely heavy, and the solutions are just not written in any books. They are just lying in discussions, in other solutions, what other people are just using for certain problems, but it cannot be just used the same way for your problem, but really it's just the learn part where we are focusing, but and what I see that we should be focusing in the future as well, but in terms of connections and experience sharing, not really the knowledge one. So it's, yeah.
Write to me after the program, and I'll introduce you to a number of platforms that are also working on the learning objective, so that you will have some people to share in that learning. Mike, when you think about the learning stuff, I'm just going to turn to you. One of the things that you've done that's pretty amazing, if you think about Freelancer First, one of the questions, Sylvia, is can we build the learning into the work itself so that it's not a separate thing, but in doing the work, I'm also learning how to do things in a better, more powerful way. Mike, you've been focused on that in a very big way, and I know that you and I were talking before the session on what you called not only mentoring but AI coaching. Can you talk a little bit about that for Sylvia?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think in anything you do where you're trying to improve a measurable skill set, you need to get out there and do it with people that are better than you. And that's true in sports, in education, in professional work. You need to learn from people that you can improve, you can learn things from, improve your skills. So at Torque, we, you know, we really do believe in, we actually call it learn, earn, and return, right? That there's three kind of main motivations, or you can kind of look at it phases of a developer's career. So Torque is really about the developer freelance community. And so one of those ways to return is providing mentoring. People love to be mentors. And I find it fascinating that there's so many people out there that have difficulty finding mentors, or not even realizing when they have a mentor. And I think it's something that, you know, a little bit of kind of forced coaching can really help teach people, like, hey, how do you utilize a mentor? I have tons of mentors in every part of my life, in whether it's being a dad, if it's water skiing, if it's professional development, if it's technology, if it's building a business. I have different mentors, and most of them, you know, there's one guy, Chris Barbin, that I have spoken to every 6 weeks for the last 10 years. And it is purely a mentor-mentee relationship. And I hope he gets something out of it. I definitely get a lot out of it. But it's so important. So what we do at Torque is we put a freelancer onto a job. We provide them with mentoring services, like out of the gate. They get 4 hours a week, and it could be anything you need. It might be something technical. Like, that's when we originally thought about it. We're like, most people have trouble getting into the technologies that they're using at a new company. So how do we ease that for them? Teach them, like, hey, this is how you use this tool. Here's this technology. Here's this trick. There's this life hack that you can do that's here. And so that was where we started. Then we realized that, hey, there's a lot of it is just like, hey, I'm having trouble having this conversation with somebody, or I don't know how to write this email, or this is a, you know, an experience that I'm not sure is good, or, you know, it's like, so a lot of those types of things that we realized were needed. So those 4 hours a week kind of turned into a really valuable, you know, a part of our business model. And so what we've always believed in is, like, you can use, so that's a people process. So mentoring is largely a people process. Coaching is becoming a lot, there's a lot of coaching that's people-based process, but I think coaching is also becoming very data-driven, right? So you think about your own personal life, right? I've got coaches all over my body. I've got one in my Oura Ring, I've got one on my Apple Watch, and they tell me little things like, hey, how many steps are you doing? You know, have you drinking enough water today? You know, what was your sleep pattern in the last few days? What's your readiness? You know, things that, like, you take into mind, you take into account. It's data driven, and then you can decide how to react on it. So we're building that technology into our platform for freelancers. So we'll give them coaching via AI, via data, on how their work as a developer, right? So we can look and analyze, like, here's what activities you're doing, here's what time you're spending in it, here's the efficiency that you're having, and give you coaching. It might be as simple as, hey, were you focused today? Did you make it to, we call it, it's a proprietary algorithm that we have that's called In the Zone, right? So did you make it to the zone today? And look back over the last quarter, and how many times did you make it to the zone? And help you set a goal of, hey, I want to have a focus time 3 to 5 days a week. I want to get in the zone on my focus. And those are things that we can help people achieve. Also, you take specific, you know, just that, hey, I'm a software developer on this language. Well, here are the behaviors of the really successful software developers. How do I resemble that? How do I teach myself to do things like that from an action base? So I think that's where we see a huge because not a ton of feedback happens in the professional world, right? Like there's not, and I think feedback should be, instantaneous. At the end of this call, you guys should send me a note. How is this meeting? I think it should be instantaneous and readily available. So that's one of the missions that we have at Torque, is to provide that type of AI coaching to our freelancers.
There's a follow-up question around that, which is terrific. It's probably easier at a unit level to provide coaching and feedback to developers than it is to marketing people, than it would be to PR people that are independent professionals, that are independent management consultants, or educators. Can you see ways, and let's open this up to the whole group, so it's not just Mike, Caroline, Philip, Stephen, are there ways that we can build this feedback, in your view, across all domains of freelancing? And I'll give you one example of something that I thought was great. We're running what we call this Freelancer First study group, where we've got 15 freelance platforms, and the CEOs are sharing data back and forth. I'll give you one example that's pretty cool. It's a company called Wethos, which is like Honeybook. It's a platform not for freelancers, quote unquote, but rather for independent business owners, defined as therapists, teachers, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really interesting. What Wethos has been able to do is because it's got a tremendous amount of financial data, because they built through this platform, they're able to take somebody, let's say, Sylvia, you're wondering whether to raise your rates by 10% because of inflation, et cetera, et cetera. You're an athletic trainer, and you do this work through video. Well, going through Wethos, you can get a pretty good sense for whether you're gonna have a problem raising your rates 10%, or whether in general people in your market will accept it. That's really powerful data. That's fabulous stuff. And it's available because they've got a strong database. As you see your platforms or the areas that you're working in, what kind of feedback, what kind of coaching would you like to provide more to your folks? And what would they like more from you? What do you think? Caroline, what do you think? What do they need to know? And part of what you wrote to me was maybe what they need to know is how to get clients.
Yeah. Actually, we have the resistance on both sides. We have the resistance from the client side, but also we have the resistance from the talent side, from the consultant side, because they're seeing the platform as, getting the percentage and that's it. They're not grasping the value of it all over the region, which is, quite challenging for us, but we also see the potential of it. So that's why we're doing a lot of education in the market. Sometimes it goes a lot one-on-one, because we can't do it otherwise.
So you have two challenges. One is market acceptance, and the other one is people knowing how to work effectively with those clients so that they drive acceptance.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've seen across the Middle East? I've got to tell you, I had a conversation with Nona, who runs Stiller.
Yeah, I know. Of course, I know her.
Egypt, exactly the same thing.
I know. We've been in discussion with her, and you're facing all the same issue. So we're doing things like manually, offline, one-on-one. But we think, we came into conclusion that this is the cost of doing it. Maybe we'll have results in like 12, 18 months, but we need to see it that way in order to harvest sometime later on differently. But the mindset is not ready yet, but we see it as a future. That's why we're investing in it. We're putting our heart into it, because we only see the future through the freelance platforms, talent economy, and so on. Yeah.
Mike, what was your experience with folks in the Middle East that were part of Top Code or may now be part of Torque? How are you seeing those kinds of issues? It's tough.
I mean, it's, we have a very, we try to take all, as much as possible. I think a responsibility of a platform is to take bias out of your platform. And so we try to really get down to, it's a technical skill level, and or it's a proficiency level. And even like in the coaching space, it's a behavioral data that we capture. And that doesn't reflect on where you are. I mean, we're a global community. We have people working from the Middle East. Certainly Top Coder had thousands. And we have in Torque as well. And for us, they're as much of a team member as anybody. It's just like they're down the street working in Boston or New York. I take it as our responsibility as to how do we get these opportunities that come to us as a platform to everybody. And that's one of the, it's a great thing to see when that actually does happen and works. One thing I do see recently has been, I think people are very cognizant of not having bias geographically. It's morphing into bias on time zone. Which is an interesting thing that I'm seeing in the buyer's side. And not only, what time zone are you, what are you willing to work, but now what is the time zone you live in? And I think that's an interesting thing that we've seen, more prevalent since COVID and since everybody's gone remote. That's kind of it. People are coming back to, well, I understand they'll overlap with me by 4 hours, but I want them in the exact same time zone. And I see that happening more recently.
I want to show you guys some data. May I, Elena, is it possible? I think I can. Here.
Absolutely.
I want to show you guys some data that I think you'll find very interesting, Sylvia and the rest of the group. So when we talk about Freelancer First, and all of this conversation is around the notion of how do we help freelancers be more successful, enjoy more prosperity, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder if some of this stuff isn't interesting to you as you go through it. So in this case, what did freelancers say? Well, they said, help me keep my skills sharp, do a better job, help me do a better job, and do a better job for me of qualifying and training clients to work well for us. Better project and budget scoping, help me reduce my wasted time and effort, give me more opportunities to show what I can do. And you can read the rest of that stuff. But I want to show you some of this stuff that I think you'll get a kick out of. If you're a freelancer, what do you see as your strengths and your areas of need with respect to gaining work, not only the earn, but the learn and the recognize? And Caroline, tell me if this doesn't fit to some extent with some of your folks as well. Freelancers see themselves as flexible. They see themselves as resilient. They see themselves as strong in meeting commitments and accepting accountability, working well with people, and values-based. What are they worried about? They're not very good networkers. They're not very good at speaking other languages. And if that becomes a problem because somebody from Jordan needs to work in the US but doesn't feel comfortable working in the US remotely, that's a scary thing. They're not great at making business connections. They don't feel that they're very good at being persuasive. They're not necessarily sensitive to how others perceive me. This is not just the Russians in there. And then they're not necessarily good risk takers. So one of the things that we know when we start to think about Freelancer First and we start to think about the earn, learn, and recognize is that many of these freelancers start with feelings of a disadvantage. Sylvia, as you think about the folks that you're starting to bring together in Hungary, do these ratings seem to make sense? Do you find that within your community there's a not just a modesty, but a sense of, gee, I wish I was better at knowing how to build business?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just really the same problems what we are facing here in this community. So just talking about where the lowest ratings are. So Hungarian freelancers speak pretty good English, but they always say not good enough, not good enough. And how it's just, I always tell them that it's, believe me, it's good enough. So it's just a pretty much the same what we are experiencing here in Hungary.
I want you to see this as well. I found this fascinating. This is from a global study, and it had 2,000 freelancers from 30 different countries. But remember that freelancers are at one of a kind. There's three different big categories. One is tech. Obviously, Mike has been a star in that area. Marketing or agency disrupting is clearly a very large platform category. And then third is independent management consulting. Take a look at these data. Satisfaction with their client experience by area of expertise. And as you think, Caroline and Sylvia, about this stuff, one of the issues is not only are there areas of common strength, but also common feelings of lack of confidence. But take a look at the difference in experience. The tech folks come from a longer tradition of freelancing. There's more of a clear understanding that the need is there because not everybody can do that stuff. Everybody thinks that they're an expert in HR and marketing, right? I mean, everybody thinks they're an expert in HR and marketing. But what we're seeing here is real differences. And I want to show you one other thing. And I found this thing very interesting. Satisfaction with clients by freelance experience. So one of the questions that I'd like to ask everybody in the room, and Mike, I'd sure like to get your perspective as well. How do we help the new freelancers? What we see from these data is that the data says it feels tougher for new freelancers, regardless of what area you're in. That they're not necessarily feeling the best in terms of understanding the work deliverables as being generally fair. Sometimes they feel onerous. People are saying, well, this client demands more from me than I should give. My client manager may not know how to work with freelancers very well. Client team members may not be as helpful and friendly. And at the end, I'm not sure I'm being paid fairly for my work. How do you help, Mike, how do you help the new freelancers? And then I'd like to turn to Philip and Anna. What's been your experience about new freelancing and how well we prepare these folks?
So in my opinion, one of the things that I've seen work is by using data, metrics, gamification. You can provide people with insights into their performance. And why that's important, I think, with whatever in any part of life, right? Anything, confidence comes first. You have to believe in yourself, and you believe in your capabilities, and believe in what you're able to do. You think of a lot of really successful athletes, right? Very confident, but they visualize what they're going to do, right? And I think so when you can provide people with that data, this is why what you just showed makes a lot of sense to me. So people are more comfortable in the field of technology to do freelancing. Well, there's also a lot more data about, hey, at the end of a technology project, it either works as an in production, like it's a definitive end, that there's an end state. If you're drawing a state diagram, it ends in a 1 or a 0. Like there's a very definitive success factor in the field of technology versus things like you said, marketing or HR. It's a little more vague. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's harder to really see, well, am I really great at HR? Like, how am I versus all of my peers globally? Very difficult question to answer. When you come to technology or math or a science related skill, it starts to become easier, which can give people that confidence that, hey, I am great. I really do know my stuff. I have the confidence that I can go make a career as a freelancer. And that's where it starts from. So if we can provide people with that confidence, I think we can enable many more people to go into the field of freelancing. And that's my answer to that question.
I love that. I love that. You know, it's very interesting that the data on people thinking about freelancing are reluctant for three reasons, and yours is something that underlines all three. They're afraid of volatility in their income, that they don't know whether it's going to be up or down, enough or not enough. They're afraid of losing the benefits that they've gotten through employment. It may be some sort of pension, it may be training, it may be time off, vacation. You know, one of the things that we know in freelancing is we don't actually get vacation unless we choose to take vacation, because it doesn't come with the deal. And the third is their fear of loneliness. Those seem to be the three things that cause reluctance among people that are excited about the concept of freelancing. But underneath all of that, I think part of what you've said is, how can we build their confidence? And if we can build their confidence, they're not as afraid of the volatility of their income, because we know that 67% of freelancers worldwide are making the same money that they were making, or equivalent money that they were making as employees. But that confidence is super important, super important. Philip, let me turn to you for a minute. When you think about Freelancer First, what's on your mind? What would you like to see organizations, your organization or others, do a better job of in prioritizing the success of freelancers?
Yeah, I'd like to share here. We have seen in Europe, for instance, some initiatives in universities where they teach business skills and primarily how to become a freelancer. I find it amazing because indeed, if we look at our university programs, none of those are how to run business unless it's like MBA or something. So I think what organizations should do, and primarily now I'm talking about maybe governmental organizations, is to promote the knowledge of business as such, independent business as such. That would be a good start. At least it would give confidence to those who would like to run solo.
We see, Alina, we see those happening in the US and Canada. They're happening in two places. They're happening in libraries around the country, all across the country, because so many people in the US are interested in second jobs that it's become a way to teach them the gig skills. That's the first. And the second is that we're seeing a whole category of community colleges. So for us, community or technical schools, 2-year technical programs, are very often teaching those skills as well. We don't see as much in universities because there are many entrepreneurial programs in universities, but you know, their focus is gaining sponsorship. It's generating income from the successful entrepreneurs that graduate. We haven't found a way to generate, universities haven't found a way to generate income from freelancers yet, other than freelance entrepreneurs, but they go to the entrepreneurial program. Philip, what about you?
Well, my main concern is I think that a lot of companies still have to become more freelance friendly. That's why I also put a question in the chat. So there are a lot of companies who are not used to work with, or are afraid to work with freelancers. So they have a classical or conservative mind that they have to own their own employees. So that's a mind shift that is necessary in Belgium, and I hope to support that mind shift through writing for Nexconomy. And you also went to Nexconomy for a session, and so your ideas are also helpful for us. But that's my main concern. So motivate companies to employ or to look for freelancers, because that's where the talent is, and that also needs some more fiscal and logistic work from the government, so that all in order. So, and in Belgium, we have a lot of initiatives for freelancers to help themselves and to network and to do that. That's okay. But on the employer's side, there's still some work to be done.
Mike, what's been your experience in breaking down those boundaries? You've been able to gain the sponsorship of an awful lot of organizations through the work that you've done in past what have you found is helpful?
Yeah. So first is a very painful lesson learned. Many of my gray hairs come from going into an organization and telling them to change is not a great business strategy. Okay. Now, and I think that's where, if you look at, where are we? Let's be realistic. We talked about 2 decades of freelancer, freelance platforms being out there. In my opinion, we're still at maybe we're at the second out of the first inning. Like, we're so early in our journey still. So I guess what I would say is, like, going into an organization and explaining to them that, hey, you need to change in order to do this is not the approach to take. So, and I did that for a long time. And it was very frustrating. Head against the wall. You find people that believe it, but you're fighting against organizational inertia the entire time. Versus going in and saying, hey, something that you do today, here's another way to do that exact same thing. Okay, make it really easy to adopt and get into, and then bring them on the journey of, so, like, for us, for example, you're already using contractors. Well, let's teach you how to use an open freelance marketplace for those contractors. That's a very easy transition into how to start. Now, your journey as a customer, as an enterprise, as a company is, once you get that part down, now how do we give you a journey of how to go into really tapping into a completely flexible, on-demand, global, resource-based, right? And there's so many things that benefits that they can get as they learn to be more proficient in that. But it's a journey. It is not a light switch. There's a lot of different things. And so it's like I said, let's be realistic. We are at the second out in the first inning of this journey.
I want to reinforce one of the points that you make, because it's so powerful. So here's a testing question for everybody, and that is, what percentage of the global revenues of staffing are attributable to freelancing? So if you think all the freelancing work that's done around the world, what percentage of total staffing work is it? What's your guess? Sylvia, what's the number? What would you say?
40%.
Okay. Caroline, what would you say?
Well, for me, it's much less, maybe 15, 20.
Very good. Philip, what would you say? What's your number?
39.
I was afraid you were going to say 42, and we were going to go to Douglas Adams there. And Anna, what would you say? Anna's not going to answer immediately, but perhaps she'll be surprised. Elena, what's your guess?
I put 50.
No, it turns out it's 3%. 3%. So the message around that is, we're not competing with one another. That'd be silly, right? We're competing with 97% of the business that's done in traditional ways. And one of the things that may be able to help, and Philip, I love your point, and I love all three of the folks that are talking, Sylvia, Caroline, and Philip, are all saying, it's hard to get the attention of the business community where we are, because we're an alternative that isn't well established. To which my response is, boy, what a great moment to organize. In the UK, they're pulling together an organization called the Association for the Future of Work. And the UK is probably as well established as anybody in freelancing, but they still need to pound the drum, because it's still a minority of activity. We've helped to put together the Spanish group, And I'm so proud of them. 7 platforms got together, Spain, and said, we need to build a community. We need to share best practice. They're working well, and they're actually making money as a result of it together. We've seen the same thing happen in Latam, and we're building a community of freelance businesses to do the same thing that they did in Spain, they did in the UK, but across Latam, and that's going to be this coming spring. I know I talked, Philip, to the Belgian community and had a wonderful conversation with Marlene and some of the other folks. Let's go back to that. Let's bang the drum. Let's find out how to get sponsorship to sort of grow that success. And then Caroline, you and Nono and about 4 or 5 other folks, they keep writing to me. Let's get together. Sylvia, let's get you together with the folks in Macedonia and other places that can help. In other words, this isn't stuff that we can do alone. We're learning from one another. And if we're not learning from one another, we're not learning, because there's too much stuff. When I come back to Mike, what Mike and Torque have been able to do, if you think about Freelancer First, there's sort of 3 dimensions, right? I mean, one is how do you build freelancer support and encouragement and success into the platform. And Mike's talked about doing that by giving people, AI-related coaching and feedback to help them to grow. Another is to help folks by giving them more information on how to be successful, and that's the learn. But there's a third piece, and that's teaching our clients to be better clients. I want to just show you one data point here, and that is, if you take a look here, less than half of the clients of our freelancers say that our clients know how to work with them. That is a very important area for us to focus on, and I hope that one of the things that we can do is get smarter about how to get clients to work effectively with us. Mike, are you finding, maybe as a last comment before we begin to close, are you finding effective ways of helping clients to be better clients?
Well, what's the age-old joke? This whole business would be great if it wasn't for the customers. No, so what we do is I mean, it's nothing complicated, but we have an onboarding plan for a freelancer, and we have an onboarding plan for a customer, and each one of them consists of best practices. So, hey, here are the best practices of being a freelancer, like what you should be doing, and we got to get agreement on that as a little bit of almost a contract between the 2 parties. For instance, if a requirement is, I want you on a daily stand-up, we need to understand that in advance and be able to set those expectations beforehand. If it's something like hey, I want you on Slack for 8 hours of the day, so we got to go back and say, hey, you know what? It's not a great experience for a freelancer, right? They're going to work different times during the day, and if you're expecting them to be there 9 to 5, it's probably not the best fit. And usually those are things that you can go back and have that conversation and explain to somebody and get past it. So it's an onboarding exercise that we do with each customer and each talent member as we get started. I think each one of the things we teach is something that we run into. So it's been a problem that we're trying to prevent from happening again. And I guess that's what we're trying to do, because keep on improving.
Cool. Elena, I think we've come sort of to the end. I just like to make maybe 1 or 2 comments. One is, Caroline, let's get together with you and Nono and some other people, and let's burst open the Mideast. And Philip, please ask Marlene to invite us back, and let's figure out, how we grow the Belgian market. I am a big lover of Brussels, so any chance to come to Brussels is very exciting for me. And Sylvia, let's get you connected to some of the other folks. So if you guys will write me, feel free to write Mike as well. I'll connect you up with some of the folks that are a day ahead of you. Not much, but a day ahead.